So triads are an amazing tool to have at your disposal, whether you're playing lead or rhythm, but once you've learned all of the basic inversions across the fretboard, how do you take triads a step further? My name is Ross Campbell, welcome to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about spread voice triads. So here are some examples of what they sound like. They sound pretty cool, so how do they differ from, say, regular triad inversions like these, for example? Well, before I explain the differences, I should say that this lesson is intended for guitar players who already have a good understanding of basic triad inversions. So if that's not the case for you, then go and watch this video first. And if you get hooked on the concept of triads and you want to learn much more about them in depth, then feel free to visit bulletproofguitarplayer.com, linked in the description. For those of you that know your triads well and are ready to take them to the next level, let's get into it. So typically we as guitar players like to play our triad inversions on the 4 string sets, which are just 4 groups of 3 strings that sit next to each other. For example, the first string set is the high E, B, and G strings. The second string set is the B, G, and D strings, so on and so forth. You can guess what the other 2 are. On each string set, we can play 3 inversions of a particular triad within an octave. For example, here's the 3 inversions of C major played on the first string set. You can play those same inversions on the other 3 string sets as well. So for even just one triad type, that being major, you already have a ton of options to choose from. I'm confident that I will be using those types of triad inversions played on the 4 string sets. I'll be using them until the day that I can't play guitar anymore, and to be honest, when I'm playing lead especially, that's what I'll use 95% of the time if I feel like using triads in my solo. But occasionally I'll feel like playing something with more of an Eric Johnson tinge to it, shall we say, and that would mean playing spread voice triads in licks like this, for example. In case you weren't aware of this already, Eric Johnson uses spread voice triads in his playing all the time. In the intro to Cliffs of Dover, there's a big sequence of them that goes something like this. Anyway, let's get into the differences between them. So the first difference between spread voice and regular triad inversions is the use of string sets. Regular triad inversions, like the ones I demonstrated earlier, are commonly played on the 4 string sets, which are 4 groups of 3 strings that sit directly next to each other. Spread voice triads, however, span across 4 strings, so they do not adhere to the use of those 4 string sets. Let's look at a root position spread voice C major triad as an example. The root note is on the A string, the 5th is on the D string, and the major 3rd is on the B string. So there you can see that the spread voice version does in fact span the distance of 4 strings, from the lowest note on the A string to the highest note on the B string. Let's compare that to a regular root position C major triad. This has the root on the A string, the 3rd on the D string, and the 5th is the open G string. So those 3 strings sit next to each other. Whereas the spread voice triad also only has 3 notes, because it's a triad, but it spans the distance of 4 strings. So what you'll find is that the bass note in the triad will be found on either the low E, A, or D strings, and the other 2 notes in the triad will be found on 2 out of the 3 strings that follow. Basically, you'll have to do some string skipping if you want to arpeggiate these. For example, here's the same spread voice C major with the bass note on the low E, the A string, and then the D string. The second difference between spread voice and regular triad inversions is the range of pitch from low to high. Let's revisit that regular root position C major once again. All of those notes, the root, the third, and the fifth, are found within 1 octave of C major. With the spread voice version, the major third is played an octave higher than the root and the fifth. So there's a much wider range in pitch from the lowest to the highest note in a spread voice triad, and that's part of the reason as to why they sound so different to regular triad inversions. The third difference is the order of the chord tones from low to high. So normally a root position major triad would have the root in the bass, the third in the middle, and the fifth on top. Root, third, fifth. With a root position spread voice major triad, however, it has the root in the bass, the fifth in the middle, and the third on top. So that's root, third, fifth versus root, fifth, third. Essentially, the top 2 notes in the triad have switched positions. You'll find that this is also the case with first and second inversion spread voice triads. The first inversion has the third in the bass, the root in the middle, and the fifth on top. Normally it would be third, fifth, root. But as you can see, with the spread voice versions, they're switched around. The second inversion spread voice triad would have the fifth in the bass, the third in the middle, and the root on top, but normally those 2 notes would be switched around. So there's 3 of the main differences between spread voice and regular triad inversions. The first was the way that they're played across 3 strings versus 4. The second was the distance in pitch from low to high. With spread voice triads, obviously, there's a much wider range of pitch. And the third difference was the order of the chord tones from low to high in each inversion. Another cool thing about playing spread voice triads is that for each inversion you have 2 different options when it comes to playing them on the guitar. For example, a first inversion C major could be played like this, but it could also be played like this. The difference there is that the first example had the root note on the G string, and the second example had the root note on the D string. And you'll find that you can do the same thing with the other 2 inversions all across the fretboard. And the order of the notes from low to high always remains the same, regardless of whether you're playing the first example of that first inversion C major, that would be third, root, fifth, and if you played the second example, that would also be third, root, fifth. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, how do I use these triads in my playing? Is the approach different to, say, using regular triad inversions? And the answer to that is no, it's not. I mean, personally, I will occasionally use these spread voice triads in my solos, and when I'm doing that, the approach is the same as using regular triad inversions. I'm using them to highlight the chords of the particular progression that I'm playing over. For example, in that intro solo, the first chord in the progression was C major 7. So I chose to highlight a C major sound with a root position spread voice C major triad, like so. I really like using the root position spread voice triads in my solos because normally if you were to play root position major triad from low to high in a solo, you would land on the 5th, because that would be the highest note in the triad. Whereas with the spread voice version, because of the different order of the notes, if you play it from low to high, you're going to land on the major 3rd. Which is a much stronger chord tone to land on compared to the 5th. And to my ears, it's a much more melodically satisfying sound. I also played a sequence of ascending spread voice triads towards the end of the chord progression, which went like this. So that was taking you from the G major chord at the very end of the progression back to the 1 chord, which was C major 7. And I started with a root position G major, then a root position A minor, then a first inversion G major, and lastly a root position C major. And then when the progression moved from A minor to D minor, I played this. And that was me just simply outlining the D minor chord with a root position D minor spread voice triad. So that's how I use spread voice triads in my lead playing, and like I said, the approach isn't any different to how I would use normal triad inversions. It's just that spread voice triads, now and then they can offer something a bit different and a bit more melodic, I guess. If you want to get more out of this lesson on spread voice triads and you feel like supporting my work, please visit bulletproofguitarplayer.com, linked in the description, where I have just added a bunch of bonus material based on this specific spread voice triad YouTube lesson, including things like the backing track used in the solo, a full PDF transcription of the solo itself with tab and notation. You get a PDF file as well as the original Guitar Pro file. I also created video demonstrations and fretboard diagrams for all major and minor spread voice triad inversions all across the fretboard, and all of this can be found in the extra section of the website, which is kind of like my own personal Patreon, where I add bonus content based on my free YouTube lessons every single month. Like I said, link is in the description, so feel free to check it out if you are interested. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, please do me a favor and like it, share it with your guitar playing friends, click subscribe, and click the notifications bell to never miss another video. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.